This is part 4 in the AutoRig Pro tutorial series. In the previous part, we covered how to rig humans using the smart features of AutoRig Pro. And now we'll be rigging animals. There will be several examples and we'll move from simple to complex. So first I'll use this dog model to cover the basics, and then we'll also rig a horse, which also includes some props, and the fox model, which also has facial features. So we are going to give it a face rig as well. One of the main problems when rigging quadrupeds is using the leg rig that AutoRig Pro provides. In this video, I'm going to recommend a certain way of using this preset, but it is important to understand that that is not the only way, or it may not even be the default way. But after testing things, that is what works well for me. What is more important is that you understand how the leg rig works, and I'll cover all of that, and then you can follow my recommendation, or you can figure out your own way of working based on a good understanding of the settings. As I mentioned, there will be 2 more examples of a horse and a fox, but please watch this video first because it discusses the basics. Rigging a dog and a horse with AutoRig Pro is really not that different once you understand the basics. So let's start rigging this dog. It is rather simple and low poly. I got this model from Sketchfab. I'm going to share the link with you, so you can get it from there, or you can get it from my Gumroad page as a blend file and just ready to work with. You can also buy a little paid product that I set up where you can get early access to my newest AutoRig Pro videos, even some exclusive ones. You'll also get work files and other resources that I create while working on this series. So let's go to AutoRig Pro, and when rigging humans, we use the smart mode of AutoRig Pro. However, for animals and other non-humans, there is no smart mode, but there are some presets that we can use right here in Add Armature. So if I click on that, we have a human. So this is another way to rig a human model, but in general, I'd recommend using the smart mode. There is a dog, horse, bird, and an empty armature. So empty is a special type of armature where you start from scratch and you can build your own custom rigs. And I'll cover that in a separate video. By the way, do not worry that there is no preset for every separate animal, such as cat, lion, zebra, and so on. The dog and the horse will allow you to rig most quadrupeds. So if it has paws, use the dog, and if it has hooves, use the horse preset. Honestly, you can even start from the dog and rig a zebra, for example. It's not that different once you understand the leg settings. But in this case, the dog seems to be the obvious choice, so I'm going to go for the dog. So that created a fully generated dog armature, which by accident is exactly as big as my dog. It is almost perfectly aligned. So let's undo, and I'm going to scale down my dog just a little bit and apply the scale, just so that I have to align the features of the rig, which will usually be the case. So I'll pick the dog armature again. And now this is the ready generated rig. To make this rig match our own model, we have to click on Edit Reference Bones. And that will place us in edit mode with this simple bone setup. And now we just have to align these bones to our dog model. And once the bones are aligned, we're going to let AutoRig Pro generate the final rig again. So I'm going to switch to side view, and I'm going to go ahead and try to align the spine, neck, and head of the rig. I just need to select bones and move them around and place them inside my character. The bone names will tell you the function of each bone that you have selected. So for example, this is the spine. You have to make sure that you have text info enabled over here. So this is also a spine bone. So I'm going to place it here. And this is the neck bone. So let's scale it down and align it with the neck of the dog. And this is the head now. And all of these small bones here have to do with the face rig. In this case, our character is very simple, so we don't want a face rig. And here is something very important. Do not delete these bones manually. In this reference bones mode, never delete any bones. The only thing that you should do is move these bones around. And the proper way to remove bones is by using these options here. So in this case, I have to select the head and go to limb options and just disable facial. And that will disable all of these sub options. Then I'll press OK and all of these small bones will disappear. These bones are still here. These are the ears and I'm going to align them to my character. So just rotate them and also place them correctly in the front view. Something like that. So here again, I have two bones for the ears. If I wanted to have only one or maybe three, again, I have to select one of the bones of the ear and go to limb options. And now I can select the count. If I set it to 1, it's going to be 1 bone. If I set it to 6, it's going to be 6 ear bones. But in this case, 2 is fine for me, so I'm going to keep working. So here the neck is kind of long, so maybe I want 2 neck bones. Again, I'm going to go to limb options and change the count to 2. So I'll press OK, and that will give me 2 neck bones. Again, it is very important that you don't select the bone and, for example, right-click and subdivide it. If you do this, you may get an Autorig Pro error. So again, never add or delete bones in this mode. Okay, now I have a tail. I'm going to rotate it, scale it, and align it with this tail. And this tail is very short. So again, 4 bones are a little bit too much. So I'm going to go to limb options and I can set count to 2, maybe even 1. But in this case, I'll go for 2 bones. Click OK, and here I have my 2 tail bones. So now we come to the legs, which will be the most important section of this video, in my opinion. If we just grab these bones in the default shape that Autorig Pro gives us, and align them with the leg, this top bone kind of aligns with the upper leg. So let's improve this alignment a little bit. I'm going to place this part where the joint of the leg should be. So something like this. This one at this joint here. And these last 2 bones will kind of cover the foot. Now we have these 3 small bones. They need to be placed at the heel of the character, and also they have to be exactly behind the foot, like this. These bones create foot roll functionality. And now if I select the leg bones and look from the front view, you'll see that they're not quite perfectly aligned. So let's move them a little bit in the x-axis. You can also look from the perspective view. So that's looking okay. Let's do the same for the rear leg. Again, you have to look from, let's say, the back view and perspective view and make sure that all of the bones are inside the volume of the model. So this alignment is looking okay. And now I want to generate my final rig again. I just need to press Match to Rig. And that will create control bones, which are perfectly aligned to my actual model. And now the rig is already working with IK and everything, but the model is not yet bound to it. So let's go to Object Mode, select the mesh, then Shift select the rig, go to Skin, and in this case, the default settings with heat maps are going to work fine. I personally don't like preserve volume. I explained that in the previous video, so I'm going to uncheck it. If you like, you can keep it checked, and then I'm going to press bind. Okay, now if I go to pose mode and move the controls, they're going to be deforming the dog. And so the main controls that we have are the head control, the ear controls, 2 neck controls, and because we have 2 neck bones, there's this special neck control in the middle, which kind of creates a smooth interpolation between the 2 neck bones. Then we have the spine controls and the tail controls. And finally, we have the leg controls. So if I move the leg now, you'll see that this back leg is deforming quite well actually. I can move this IK control and it naturally bends the leg. And if I rotate it, this gives me this rotation of the foot, which looks quite good, and I think it will give me good controls for animation. If I try the front leg now, it behaves similarly, but what I don't like is this shape of the front paw that I get. You can work this way, but if you want to straighten this foot here, you may have to rotate other controls and basically counter animate. So that may be okay depending on your preferences, but personally I want to see if I can find another setup that rotates this whole part of the leg. So I'm going to go to the rigging tab of AutoRig Pro and edit the reference bones again. So I'm going to quickly match the rig and bring in a reference image. So this is the anatomy of a dog, and you'll see that like most quadrupeds, the dog walks on its toes. Then we have a foot, at least that would be the foot in a human, then the lower leg, upper leg, and again what would be the scapula in a human. So let's go to the rig, edit the reference bones, and let's try to create a setup that is more like this anatomy that we see here. So if I select the first leg bone, you'll see that it is actually called toes. And the second one is called foot. Then we have the leg, which in AutoRig Pro language is the lower leg. And then we have the thigh, which is the upper leg. And then we have thigh B, which is an additional bone. I'm not sure why it is called thigh B. But anyway, let's start at the toes and try to match the anatomical landmarks. So this first bone will cover the toes, the second one will cover the foot. So we are basically offsetting the bones. When working with the reference bones, be careful not to press the F key instead of the G key, because it will create a new bone. Just undo. So this will be the lower leg, this will be the upper leg, and I will align this last bone to be the scapula. And now I'm going to match the rig. Now if I try to move the leg, it's going to be very weird, and that is because we completely changed the position of the legs, so the weight binding is no longer valid. So I have to go to Object Mode, select the mesh, and then Shift select the rig again, go to Skin, and just bind anew. Okay? Now if I try to move the leg, you'll see that it does look quite different, and this area here, the scapula basically, is way too active. What we can do about this is go to Tool, and you'll find this 3-bone IK setting. If you just dial it down, the scapula will stop reacting to the movement of the IK. And you'll see that we don't have this zigzag pattern in the foot anymore. And if I rotate the IK control, it will rotate the whole foot. And if I only want to rotate the toes, I can grab this additional control here and rotate it. Okay, so this 3-bone IK setting is essential when trying to create this setup, but instead of setting it to 0, you can actually set it to something like 0.1 or 0.2. And then when you move the IK control, you'll see that there is a little bit of movement in the scapula, but not too much. And that looks good to me. I can, of course, select this scapula widget and rotate it manually if I need to. So I have full control of this area. And I have to do the same for the other leg. So just select one of the widgets and set 3-bone IK to 0.1 or 0.2 or even 0 if you like. So this is my recommended setup for the front leg. Now I'm going to select everything and go to Pose, Clear Transforms All. Or in AutoRig Pro, you can use the Reset All pose. However, you have to be careful with it because it will fully reset your rig. For example, if some of the legs are in FK mode, they will be set to the default IK mode. So here is an alternative to playing with this 3-bone IK setting. Especially if your model is very simple, you can actually go back to ARP, Rig, Edit Reference Bones, select one of the front leg bones, limb options, and disable the 3-bone leg option. Press OK. And you'll see that this scapula bone that we used to have completely disappeared. Now I'm going to select the right leg, and again, limb options, disable 3-bone leg. Okay. Now match to rig, and I'll have to reskin the character. So select the mesh, then shift select the rig, skin, and click on bind. Okay. So now if I move the leg, I have my preferred setup for the foot and toes. And if I look under tools, you'll see that the 3-bone IK slider is completely gone. That is because we removed the additional leg bone. So now the 3-bone IK setting does not apply anymore. So it is not displayed. But I'm going to undo. So this is the state that I had before with the additional scapula bone and a 3-bone IK set to 0.1. This is my preferred setup, so I'm going to keep this. Just keep in mind that if you completely don't want the scapula bone, you have this option to simplify the leg in the reference bones options. Now let's focus on the rear leg and see what kind of behavior we get for it when we adjust the reference bones so that they are more anatomically correct. So again, I can look at my reference. So again, the back legs are supported by the toes. Then we have the foot bone, the shin bone or the lower leg, then the upper leg. And the big difference here is that rather than a scapula, here we have a completely static pelvis bone. Okay, let's edit the reference bones. And so again, I want to offset the bones. So this will be the toes, this is the foot, this is the lower leg, this is the upper leg, and finally we have this additional bone. So here we can go to the limb options and disable the 3-bone leg setting. And that will make this bone completely disappear. But for now, instead, I'm just going to move this bone towards the center so that it kind of represents the pelvis and match the rig. So we have to bind the mesh to the rig again, bind, and go to pose mode. And now if I move this leg, again, the behavior is reasonable. So with this setup, the foot is rotating from this pivot point, whereas with the previous one, it was rotating from this one. Here, if I want to rotate the toes, I have to pick this widget here. But here it's important to note that we have this bone in the pelvis area, which we can rotate, and it also moves automatically a little bit. So if you're going to work with this setup, you should go to Tool and completely disable 3-bone IK. Or again, you can go to the reference bones and remove this additional bone completely from the setup. Okay, so now we have this behavior of the rear leg. But I'm going to go with the previous one, so I'm just going to undo. This part of the video was simply meant to show you what kind of options you have and how they affect your rig. So I'm going to undo. And I'm going to use this setup. In fact, I strongly recommend that you also use this setup for the hind legs, because it automatically keeps the thigh and the foot parallel to each other, and that is exactly what tends to happen in real life. Now let's quickly talk about the pole targets for the legs. For each leg you have this pole target control, which controls the rotation of the leg. You can say the orientation of the elbow if you want to compare it to a human. And now in the newest version of AutoRig Pro, by default, these pole targets are not connected to the legs. I think in the previous versions they were connected. Whether they're connected or not is controlled by this snap pole parent option. So if I just press it, you'll see it change to 1. And now when I move the IK control, you'll see the pole target moving with it. And now the problem with that is when I move the leg forward, around here it can start flipping. So one way to solve this is to go back to ARP, edit the reference bones, select one of the legs, limb options, and here for IK pole distance, you can enter a higher value like 2. Have to do it for the other leg as well. And match to rig. So on the pole target's a little bit farther away, and it's going to be more difficult to flip the leg, but it may still happen. Also, when rotating the foot, you can flip the leg. So that is why I prefer the default setting, which is snap pole parent to 0. And then you don't have to worry about this flipping of the leg. If you turn it on, this has the advantage that you can just rotate the foot around, and that kind of rotates the whole leg. So if you like that, you may turn this on, but then when the leg starts flipping, you'll have to manually move the pole target back. Anyway, for myself, I'm going to turn it off. Yeah, also for the rear leg, I prefer to have it off. So this is my recommended setup. If we go to the reference bones, for the front leg, I have the top bone of this leg chain aligned with the scapula of the dog. Then second bone is thigh, third bone is shin, next one is the foot, and next one is the toes. For the rear leg, I have the first bone aligned with the thigh, second bone with the shin, third bone with the foot, and then the second to last bone will control the toes, and the last bone controls the tip of the toes. So front leg and rear leg are set up kind of differently, but I think that's okay because the anatomy and the functionality of these two types of legs is different enough. So I think having a different setup for each one is not that weird after all. And then when I match the rig, for the front leg in tools, I turn 3-bone IK off or to a very low value, like 0.15 maybe. And I keep pole parent to 0 for all of these legs. And that gives me the controls that I like. Before we wrap this video up, let's talk about bone shapes. So these boxes and circles are the controls that let us pose and animate this dog model. But as you can see, they're not perfectly aligned to a model. But AutoRig Pro gives us really nice tools to make any shapes that we like. So for example, AutoRig Pro usually doesn't do a good job with the head control for a quadruped. So I can select this shape, go to ARP, Rig, and click the Edit Shape button. Okay, and then I can use any modeling operations that I like. I'll turn on X-ray so that I can select vertices in the background, and then I'll just align this shape to the head of the dog. So it can be something like this. I can scale this on the x-axis. I could even select these edges and subdivide them and create a more dog-like shape. Okay. So basically, right now we are just editing a mesh. But when you're done, don't just go to object mode. That is not the workflow that AutoRig Pro expects from you. You have to click the Apply Shape button. Okay, and then you'll be back to pose mode, and your control will have exactly the shape that you created. What's really cool is that you don't even have to be in the default pose. For example, I can move this leg and even rotate it, and then edit shape. Edit this shape any way I like, and when I press Apply Shape, the shape will be exactly as I created it. But in this case, it's better to edit this shape in the default pose, so let's undo and edit shape, and let's say that I want to squash this so that it's flat on the ground. Something like this, and then I'll apply the shape. And then another very cool feature is that if I want to transfer this edited shape to the other side for any symmetrical bones, I can just press this little symmetry button here, and the shape on the other side will be reshaped. When you really need to sit down and animate a character, having good control shapes is extremely important, so it is really nice that AutoRig Pro gives you these great features. So I'll keep editing some of the shapes that I don't like. In pose mode, when you enable X-ray, it will show the shapes through the mesh, and if you disable it, the mesh will occlude the shapes. So I think it's best when the shapes are occluded, but you can still see them. That's all for this video. In the next one, which will be uploaded in the coming days, we'll rig a horse, including props. After that, I'll share another quadruped video showing how to rig a semi-realistic fox, including a face rig. So subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss those videos. Also consider supporting me by buying the Auto Rig Pro course on Gumroad, and you'll also get some bonuses.